Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your Rant Line, Rave Line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys. I can't believe it.
Let's open up that race line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC has hired Lincoln Riley. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rant of Troy Radio, episode 494, coming to you on Monday, August 7th. It is our annual preseason roundtable episode. We're going to be talking about the big picture about the USC Trojans, but also a lot of conference realignment talk because the whole landscape of college football has changed in the last week. The Pac-12 essentially done with, and we've got our friends Kenneth Martin and Jake Merrifield along for the ride today. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rant of Troy. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. Email address, rantoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227. So that could
Suck it, what's
through and
Suck it, Rant of Troy.
Yeah.
Harder in person.
As always,
It still works.
I'm your host, Mike Garcia, John Lowe, my co-host, here in the Rant of Troy studio, live in Los Angeles, Alicia D'Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are live on YouTube, as always, in a special little format. We've moved over to the dining room table, which means that we've enlarged our production here. We've got a round table with our friends.
It's a rectangle, I would like to point out.
Yes, it is a rectangle.
It is a
very
rectangle.
What else is he lying about?
We got Kenny and Jake here, and so we got no video. So if you're watching us on YouTube, there's no video of us. But
It's because we're on strike as SAG actors. We can't show our faces.
Exactly. But if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, it's the same format as always. So as always, every time we have our guests here, we're super pumped about it, especially bringing THT back from the dead.
Yeah, I mentioned it on your call-in show somewhat recently, but I did have to come to the heavy decision to leave THT and to join the ROT conference. So
Very nice.
Yeah.
You know, conference realignment is killing podcasts.
It really is.
Yeah. I don't know where we're going to find a home for Will. I mean, he's out of the country. That travel is insane. So
European
good luck
football,
to
man.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. Will has been relegated to the Eredivisie.
Or is he just going independent?
Maybe.
Traveler Hates Thursday does have a life beyond its a life beyond. I heard you guys get shouted out on like a cow podcast last week, so you got that going for you.
Yeah, we keep showing up. They try to get rid of us, but
Well, they've changed their name. They're now Traveler Loves Fridays.
Oh,
right?
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm every time I hear the music, like you play it, and it's so slow to me because when I listen to it, I'm listening to it at 2 times speed.
it's supposed to
and
be
it's much
2
more
times
peppy.
speed.
It's much more
Yeah.
peppy, but it's all good.
It is absolutely the ultimate, like, head nodder. You're not
For sure.
along, but it is very slow compared to the 1.5.
The
speed I
podcast
used
is
to-
supposed to be listened to quickly.
Yes.
I feel like.
Yeah, I think if you listen to podcasts at like 2 times speed, like how do you retain everything?
Well,
I
if
don't
it's
get
sports, 2 times is easy because there's so much dead space. I hate to like cast light on how
Not this
our
one,
process.
but other
No.
ones.
Yeah,
other
of course.
ones.
Yeah.
There's so much dead space in the actual real thoughts that it's very easy to keep up on a sports podcast at 2 times.
You're crazy.
Philosophy.
And I'll reverse
those
if I
things.
feel like I missed something.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can always do that. But like audiobooks and that's got to be 1.5 or below, but 2 times for sports.
And
for
for me,
sure.
if it's comedy, it's got to be 1 because I want to hear the jokes like in the right,
Like
right timing
cadence
and
and-
everything.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
if it's just info dumping, I'll speed it up.
I'm a normal speed person. I'm basic.
I mostly do normal, but sports I will
Unbelievable.
speed it up.
I'm leaving.
Well, Jake's elite, so you know.
Well, so we got Kenny here from Traveler Hates Thursdays and Jake Merrifield from the What's Bruin Show. You can follow him on Twitter at WBJake68. You can follow Kenny on Twitter at Kenneth Martin 7. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's always good to be here. I love you guys dearly. And thank you for having me back on. And mostly now on Twitter, I really like my WBJ account is there, but really at What's Bruin Show is like 85% me and 15% Mike Regalado from Bruin Report Online. But generally that's us giving our id thoughts about whatever.
There you go. Look for that if you're more into the UCLA side of things. You're probably
Come on,
not.
follow along.
But you might be. You might be. Anyways, here on Rant Radio, we have a lot of content coming your way. Next week, we start our 2-a-weeks. Is that what we're calling it? 2-a-weeks?
Yeah, why not?
Next Monday, August 14th, episode 495, the offensive preview, followed by Wednesday, the 16th, will be episode 496, the defensive preview, previewing the Trojans going in the 2023 season. We're super pumped about it. So come back here next week on YouTube on Monday and Wednesday night, and you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts as well. Along with, we got bonus content. As always, you can join the Rot Squad. Bonus content coming your way this month and every month, especially during the season as we do things like call-in shows. We've got a Discord. You can access the Discord by becoming a member on YouTube. For $4.99 a month, you can join the Rot Squad, and it's a fun time. So hit the button live here on YouTube and join us, and we'll be friends forever.
For the offensive preview, don't worry. You can let your 12-year-olds listen to it. It's not that.
It's
not that offensive.
Yeah,
It's
it is
very
offensive, but not that
I find
bad.
it extremely offensive.
You would.
I don't want to hear about it. I really don't.
Well, you don't want to get too defensive on Wednesdays, but we'll see. The season predictions episode coming up 2 weeks from today. And 2 weeks from today will also be game week, which is insane.
Wild.
It's already 2 weeks because SC plays week 0. So our first game preview will come up to you on August 23rd, Wednesday nights, previewing USC and San Jose State Locking Horns at the Coliseum. Saturday nights, August 26th. One little last news nugget before we get to talking about the latest going on in college football. We are on TikTok now.
Oh.
Allegedly.
So are you doing like cool little videos and stuff?
Yeah. Go to TikTok, search Rant of Troy Radio. Go follow us on TikTok. There's like one video now, but there will be future episodes videos to come.
You got to get Jesse on there.
I'm training up for it. Yes, we do need to do special Jesse TikToks, but it's a brand new world. We're joining it.
Like the only TikTok I've ever actually made myself was about my puppy. So I mean, I totally feel that.
Yeah.
So when Grizzly was tiny, I did it for the schools I was happened to be teaching at the time.
Oh, that's cute.
That was fun.
When Grizzly was tiny, wasn't he just a Bruin then?
Yeah, he was actually. Yeah, but we called him Grizzly right from the get-go, though.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, go follow us on TikTok. There'll be more content as we go along towards the season as well. But guys, there's so much to get to. Let's just start. I guess I'm going to hit the news button.
Let's go, Michael.
We are gathered here today to discuss.
It's not a wedding; it's a funeral. Oh.
The end. Yeah. You say that at funerals too, right? Do you?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Anyways,
maybe the end.
I say good to see you all.
I'm sorry, I'm messing with.
And
your
I'm
flow.
a ghost.
I'm sorry, I'm messing with your flow.
The end of the Pacific 12 conference. It came to us as, what was it? The AWWU, whatever it was. The Alliance of Western Universities or whatnot. It was the PCC for a long time. The Pac-8, the Pac-10, the Pac-12, and currently, I guess momentarily, the Pac-4.
Unbelievable. Or one out.
USC and UCLA, of course, left over a year ago and are gone to the Big Ten starting next season. But the exodus really got underway, especially last week, where Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah has all left the conference to go to the Big 12 starting in 2024.
Not necessarily in that order.
No.
And then Oregon and Washington are leaving to go to the Big 10, joining USC and UCLA in 2024, even though they agreed to a reduced Big 10 revenue payout, which is wild. Like, they want to go to the Big 10 that bad, they'll take a pay cut. According to the AP, the Ducks and the Huskies will receive a reduced payout. Compared to the current Big Ten members and to USC and UCLA, which are projected to receive more than $60 million each year in media rights from the league starting next year, a person familiar with the negotiations said that the Ducks and Huskies would receive about $30 million per year for its first 6 years in the conference, with annual escalators and the ability to draw on future payments. That's how desperate they were to leave not only the Pac-8, at Pac-6. Whatever
at the time, it would have been technically 9 still because they jumped before
Colorado.
Arizona.
It was Colorado. Colorado left, then Oregon and Washington leaving prompted Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah to leave. And now there's talk about the 4 remaining schools of the Pac-12, the Pac-4, Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, and Washington State potentially go into the ACC.
Insane.
Like
there's no way
maybe a merger.
There's no way
with the Mountain West.
There could be a merger with the Mountain West. Like anything is still on the table there. It's completely developing. Our luck by the time this hits the.
Let's keep checking Twitter to see where they are next. This last week, if you're a fan of just the drama, the high drama aspect of college football, very entertaining week.
Drama and chaos.
This was our version of #Scandival for any reality fans from earlier this year. This was the college football version of that. There was realignment, rumors, news in heavy quotes breaking every day. And then it seemed like a sure thing. Arizona's leaving. They're trying to get ASU to go too. Then all of a sudden the morning of, none of that's happening. They're going to save the Pac-12. I mean, it was high drama. And everyone is reacting to it now.
It had the drama of a high stakes game of chicken.
Yeah,
that's a good
between Oregon and Washington and Arizona State and Utah and the rest.
Colorado kind of leapt back to the Big 12 sort of before everybody else.
Colorado initiated the game of chicken, but in the end, it was a game of chicken between the now Big 12 schools and the now Big 10 schools.
I think really Arizona and
Oregon. Yeah. Because it seems like Washington followed Oregon's lead and the rest followed Arizona's lead. But it was a high stakes game of chicken where it was like they were both waiting for the other one to make the move that caused the death of the Pac-12. And we know this because the death of the Pac-12 has now resulted in a lot of finger pointing and the Arizona Big 12 sort of contingent saying, well, we were all going to show up on Friday morning and sign the stuff, but Oregon and Washington said they weren't coming. And like Oregon and Washington are taking the blame. But in reality, every single one of these schools from USC initially on down were all looking out for themselves and all continue to look out for themselves. Like Stanford and Cal are having to look out for themselves. Oregon State and Washington State are having to look out for themselves. They're all in it alone. And that is the reality and has always been the reality.
And I would just say that, I think this was initiated by obviously our schools leaving back a year ago. But the game of chicken, everybody ends up jumping off the tractor. But that part gets ratcheted up the longer that, Kliavkov stalls about the media contract and Big 12 gets it. So, I mean, that's when the game of chicken really gets going in earnest. And everybody jumps off the tractor. Like nobody's left except for Cal, Stanford, and Oregon State and Washington State sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
Was there any way this could have been salvaged? Obviously.
I think very easily.
Yes.
If they all just would have held their water a little bit.
If Colorado hadn't left, I think it would have been very simple to salvage a Pac-12 that was weakened by USC and UCLA.
Sure.
But not so weak. Because here's the thing. The Big 12 is doing a victory lap. But let's be honest. Does the Big 12, as it's currently formulated, actually have any brands that are better than Oregon or Washington?
I think you could argue Utah goes in there as a possible one of those, but nobody else that they have, I don't think.
No, but
TCU maybe.
Utah was a member of the Pac-12 for the timing that I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Utah is going to be one of the biggest brands in the Big 12 already.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 without USC and UCLA would have been heavily weakened, absolutely. But Oregon and Washington, I think, along with Utah and Stanford, if they sort of get their stuff together, I think they could have had a go of it, and they still would have ultimately been the sort of under tier to the SEC and the Big Ten, but they would have survived.
And I mean, there was all those, posts making fun of the deal for very good reasons about the Apple deal. But the one that was saying, would you sign up to watch this? If you're a college football fan, yes, you would.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would. You don't want to see Oregon and Washington, Oregon, Utah each year. You're fine just dropping those games.
Even as a fan of a team that was moving to the Big Ten.
I still would have, yeah.
Number one, I'm a big Apple TV fan. Like, that service is worth purchasing for we're not
it would have been an add-on though.
But like the initial subscription for Apple TV is absolutely worth it.
And you probably have it.
And I already have it.
Like,
and
Apple
I already
product,
love it. Yeah. The additional subscription to Pac-12 football, I think Michael and I probably would have ended up getting it, even though
certainly
we weren't gonna be watching USC on it. Like, I feel like that probably would have been worth it unless it was exorbitantly expensive. But if you're talking like the figure I saw was something like $75 a year. Yeah, sure.
Well, I think the Apple TV thing is fascinating because when the MLS went to Apple TV, people were simultaneously upset that they had gone to a place that had taken them off of ESPN and really kind of diminished the accessibility of the conference. At the same point, everyone says that the only reason that Inter Miami got messy was because of the Apple TV deal and all that stuff. Like, both of these things can be true at the same time. And when you look at the Pac-12, I think it could have been either way. It could have been something that kind of benefited them. But the problem is, in the landscape of college football, one right now that is dominated by Fox and ESPN, kind of pushing their weight around to sort of push teams to the Big Ten and to the SEC to have the big money. Apple TV cannot compare. So I think if you're Oregon and Washington, you absolutely want to go that way. Because the Big 12, even with Oregon and Washington, especially without Oregon and Washington, is just a bunch of like good, fun programs to watch from a college football perspective. But is a random person tuning in? I don't know that they are. Like, this is the problem with college football right now. Is
now for BYU, Utah, and maybe the Territorial Cup, like the rivalries.
We are not normal people, right? Like,
we're watching that.
The people listening to this podcast, you are not normal. Like, you are the fraction of a percent that is the diehard that's going to watch no matter what. But to the average person, which these contracts are sort of aimed at getting more average random people in the middle of Ohio or whatever, like, are they going to be more inclined to watch Big 10 football? Big 12 football? I don't necessarily think so.
The problem is you can't stumble upon a streaming only game.
That's a big part of it.
My grandma is going to watch what's on Fox, CBS, NBC, or ABC. And I know no one in our generation does that. Like, that's not a thing for us at all. I think there's a good amount of people who are still just flipping cable channels.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. I really think that, number one, I don't blame any of the former Pac-12 institutes from leaving. Just like really for UCLA and USC to leave last year, it was a no-brainer in hindsight. Yeah. So I don't blame any of them for making the decision they did. But had they stuck together, the Pac-10 would have been a very viable conference. And I think if given the chance, they would definitely be a better conference competitively than the Big 12, anything the Big 12 has. But the problem is that by the time it got down to that Apple deal, right, and it's for the second time in a row when this media deal comes up, it's like, oh, bet on yourselves. You'll get the subscribers, yada, 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 in the face of every other conference getting guaranteed money. The Pac-12 institutions, or they had no other choice but to come to the conclusion, don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining, right? That's what it was. You fool me once, shame on, all that stuff. It was a ridiculous ask to try to get the Pac schools to go along with that after the experience they had with the Pac-12 network.
Yes.
It was an absolute non-starter.
But also,
and that's how it turned out.
Yes, but also, like, this is all I think it was Stuart Mandel who summed it all up perfectly for me. Like, this was a decade of the Pac-12 just being well run. So, like, I am not surprised that the remnants of the Pac-12 that USC and UCLA left behind couldn't get their shit together, because it's not, contrary to what I saw written, I think by Pete Thamel, like, USC was not running the conference, because if they had been, things probably would have been not necessarily better, but certainly different if USC and UCLA had been running the conference the way
we probably would have played in the 2011 Pac-12 championship.
Well, yeah, something like that.
Thing.
But no, like the leadership in the
What
Pac-12,
a wonderful game that was.
The overall leadership of the Pac-12, the people who are making the decisions, who were pushing the conference in the direction that it was going, were the same people that drove it into the ground. So of course, like it the leftovers, the Arizonas and ASUs and power brokers at all of those schools were the ones that contributed to the Pac-12 not seeming to have a plan that all the other conferences at least seem to understand what the direction of college football is going.
It's all the holistic circumstances surrounding it too, because a big part of this is the Pac-12 being down compared to where it had been in the previous, 20, 30 years. SC going through what it went through in the, at the end of the 2000s into the 2010s. But also, I think a major part of this is just the fact that when all these conferences agreed to the 4-team playoff going from the BCS to that, I think that put everybody in a posture that made this possible too. If they had gone to 6 or 8 and all of the Power 5 conferences at the time had been guaranteed a spot, we would not be here right now. Yeah. And I think the Pac-12 would be very healthy because they wouldn't have gotten shut out of the playoff, 5-6 years in a row, and they wouldn't have been sitting on 2 out of 10 playoff appearances, right? It's just Oregon and Washington, the only ones that ever made the freaking playoff. And that just in and of itself turned it from, all of these teams putting their best foot forward at the end of the year to turning into a reality show. And it's like, who's kicked off the island this year? And it turned out that the Pac-12 more often than not did it because, the Pac-12 eats itself. Yeah. And that, that was a huge factor in this too.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you brought up the playoff because I wanted to bring that up in this because in all the discussion about how much this is changing college football, which it is, of course, I'm not arguing that this is a massive seismic shift for college football. But I don't think, at least I don't remember seeing the same hand-wringing when the playoff was brought about, which I think also really fundamentally changed college football more than people even thought it might at the time. I think that's hugely responsible for a lot of, like, people are talking about traditions and history right now. Yeah. That's responsible for a lot of traditions and history going out the window.
Yes. It absolutely changed the sport. Did it change it for the worse? I think is the question that I keep pushing back against people. I think
the word worst is
it's for the different. The sport continues to change because that's what happens. Things develop and change and it sucks to lose certain traditions, but you also bring new traditions in, you bring new rivalries in, you bring new concepts in. Like it was the whole idealization of the pre-BCS. Like the pre-BCS couldn't freaking figure out who a real champion was. So yeah, the BCS sucked, but also the thing that came before it kind of also sucked in different ways. And the playoff sucked in the 4-team playoff, but it was it was a better way to decide a champion than the BCS, which sucked, by the way.
And that's where I disagree, because I think that the 4-team playoff in and of itself was a bad call, and I think that it led more directly to what's going on now that everybody's complaining about than if they just would have expanded in a way that was inclusive to all of the power players at the time.
Yeah,
and I think it would have, and so that's the only one where I'm like, I'd rather have the BCS, I'd rather have the pre-BCS, I'd rather have the 12-team or the 6-team or the 8-team or whatever they want, other than the 4 as it was, and that's the big one that I have problem with.
The reason they went to 4 and not something bigger is because everybody was was sort of like uncertain about, we're going to do a playoff, but we can't do too much of a playoff.
And the Rose Bowl's got to come after 5:30 or whatever.
It's a whole thing. I don't know. I just think there's a lot about this that is change is scary, and I get it. But
I think there's a difference between change and like change, right? Like, this is, I think of, looking at European soccer and how everything changed in the early 90s with the creation of the Premier League, the big modifications to the rebranding of the European Championship to the Champions League. Like, so much changed that if you watch soccer, everything is redefined as like almost I'm telling a Liverpool fan this, and you're gonna.
No one told you there'd be soccer talk. I think I'm gonna leave.
I already knew exactly where
people
this was
have
going.
started recounting when championships started, right? Like that kind of thing, right? And dating back to '92 at the beginning of the Premier League. So I wonder, is this going to be that case for us going forward? Is it going to be like the NFL merger? Are we going to look back at this and say, okay, this team has won X amount of titles since the big realignment in 2024 when all these teams moved. Is this the beginning of the new era? And I think that part of it could be true because you look back and the Premier League and the Champions League and all this stuff that changed in soccer, it made the game better. Even if it was different, it made the game better. Could that work for college football? I don't know that this is quite the same thing. Because as much as I want to believe that that's the case, that this will be different but better and improve the game, I think we already had those changes. And those changes came in the 80s when the TV thing got changed to where the conferences had the rights for TV deals. And you were able to have the births of modern conferences in the 90s. That's why Penn State and Florida State and Miami stopped being independent schools and they joined conferences. I think that is our version of what the creation of the Premier League and Champions League is. I think the creation of the BCS, where number 1 and number 2 could meet in a national championship game, was that version for us. And yes, the game is much better now, even if it is different, because we can actually get some sort of a semblance of a champion and all that stuff. But I think so much of the things that we love about college football has changed since the birth of the playoff and the discord of how we're talking about college football and everything. And I worry that it's going to get even fundamentally worse going forward. I'm optimistic, but the idea, the rivalries, the USC Weekender is no longer going to be a thing. You can't go to
at least for a couple years.
You can't go to games, just by driving a 6-hour drive, which on the West Coast, the 6-hour drive is nothing. On the East Coast, that's super far, but on the West Coast, that's nothing. And it was a big deal that we could just, pick up and drive to ASU, right? You can't do that when SC plays Purdue now. And, Oregon going to play Rutgers, if you're an Oregon fan, you can't just pick up and go do that. If you're, a Utah fan, you can't just drive over to Colorado like you could have before. Well, I guess you could still go to Colorado, but if you're going to play West Virginia, right? These things have so structurally changed everything that I'm worried that we're just turning into the NFL. And
that is a big fear.
I like college football because it's not the NFL.
I agree.
And when you have Fox and ESPN basically trying to seemingly make reproduce the NFL for college, it makes me nervous because I don't want that soulless thing. And you end up with these conferences where now they're so loaded with big brands. Somebody's got to lose, right? Somebody's got to lose games. We got questions that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes here, but with I thought especially with Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC, they dominated the Big 12.
Well, Oklahoma did.
Yes, Oklahoma did. But they're just average teams in the SEC, right?
It's the fear for us, right?
Yeah, I think it's the fear for SC. UCLA. I think it's the fear for UCLA and for Oregon and Washington.
Again, USC's won the conference, the Pac-12.
You're just one of everybody else now. And does that take away part of the fervor? And as much as I know that we hate to admit this, as much as the people listening to this podcast are diehards who are going to be ride and die no matter what, when your team isn't necessarily winning, are you going to be as passionate about things going forward? We literally just saw this with
2 years ago,
right?
Yeah.
2 years ago, there was the amount of people going to games, the amount of people even tailgating, it dropped completely off the cliff.
Yeah, but what you're talking about is
less about USC, because I think SC has will be able to translate to the Big Ten way better than most of these other schools. going into their conferences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that. But also what you are talking about is almost making an excuse for not putting in the competitive juices that you need in order to succeed. We just came out of a 10-year period where USC lacked success, and we all understood why they didn't lack success. Why they lacked success? Because they lacked ambition, because there was no one driving forward to say, you know what? 9 wins is not acceptable if you're USC.
Yeah.
We've talked at length, about UCLA and whether or not UCLA settles too much, and how to properly judge where UCLA should exist within the sort of college football landscape, and there's questions about basketball and all that kind of stuff as well. But like, when it comes down to it, what you're talking about, I understand that anxiety, but also that's an individual program issue. And it sucks if your team sucks, but like, teams have sucked. I mean, USC had down times. Stanford went from being peak of Pac-12 to being doormat of Pac-12 again, the way that they sort of flip-flopped. We've seen all of the programs in the Pac-12 sort of have their rises and falls, and it's for a variety of reasons. This is the natural order of sports.
And I would say also, like, we have a little preview of what that looks like, of someone's got to lose when you get an 8-4 Texas A&M ranked 15th.
Yes,
like
because they're in the SEC and they're getting the benefit of the doubt, because
which will happen with this new Big Ten.
And we see this in the NCAA tournament where you have teams.
But doesn't that kill off the notion of what we love about college
No,
football? That every Saturday
absolutely
matters?
not.
Does it though?
I think it does.
Why does the national champion
every Saturday does still matter?
Yes.
I understand the argument about it, turning into a little mini NFL and all that stuff, but it's just, number one, we're talking about these changes. This is definitely a paradigm shift. Going to a 12-team playoff is a paradigm shift. Cutting out some major conferences and consolidating is a paradigm shift that we're going to have to get used to. And Kenny hit it right on the nose when he says, well, now we're going to have to deal with more teams that are 8-4 in the playoff, going far in the playoff, maybe a national champion that has 2 or 3, or God forbid, 4 losses. Right. But look, in the past, the reason why that was so obnoxious to everybody is because they point to Alabama, or they point to LSU, or they point to SC in the early 2000s, and they'd be like, "Well, look, they're 11-1, and they're 12-0, or whatever. They went 15-0 to win the title." But when you look at it, yeah, they went 15-0, and they won 4 impressive games, and they won 6 games that they were going to win 99 times out of 100, and they won 4 games that they shouldn't even been games because they so outmatched their opponents. It's just making it to where we are, consolidating the talent a little bit, but it's not going to be the NFL, because other than the very top level of this, where a lot of these players are going to the NFL, you're still dealing with a lot of teams that have a lot of guys who are just there to play college, and then they're going to move on to something else. And there's still going to be the mistakes. And there's still going to be the variance.
The chaos. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And I think the 12-team playoff puts some relief on that too, because you don't have to go undefeated in order to compete for a national championship. Now you can be a team in the Big Ten that is, 3rd or 4th, and you can still theoretically get in depending on the landscape, and then have a really exciting end to your season and have people get invested and all of those kinds of things. So I think it's just drawing lines a little bit too straight from the way we used to do things to the way that we're going to do things, and that's going to make it turn into the NFL. Sure. I don't think it turns into the NFL for that reason, precisely because of what Jake says. College football has a unique chaos to it that the NFL cannot replicate.
And personality, too.
Because
For sure.
of...
Fans will be there and all those things.
A whole nother issue, though, is how many plays they're going to shave away. Eventually, when we play in a game, it's like 10 plays long. That's another existential threat. But other than that, I think it's very healthy.
And is it going to be like the NFL, where every game is 20-17, and whoever's got the ball last wins?
I don't think there's any way that happens, just because of the talent differentials, even within it. But yeah,
it's
stop
going
taking
the
away our
opposite
college
direction
football.
of that too. We get the higher and higher score games. It feels like.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on a tweet that was sent out last week from friend of the show, Kyle Kensington.
What a G.
Which is, I think it's a really interesting, kind of what I touched on. He says, what program moved power conferences in the last 20 years that is better off competitively? I don't mean money, which is whatever. I mean performing consistently at a higher level than when they left their previous league. So this goes to my question, my thought of like, well, someone's got to lose, right? Like, just because you are the big power in one conference doesn't mean that you're going to be that in another. And then you read this tweet and you start to think about it. 20 years ago, when Virginia Tech and Miami were going to go to the ACC, they were going to the ACC to be the big dogs in the ACC.
And it didn't turn out that way.
I don't think either one of them have won the conference. Like, that is, or if they have, like, once, 20 years, like, it is insane that they have not had that success. We know what's happened with Nebraska. Colorado has had the historically worst seasons ever.
Yeah.
When they went to the Pac-12.
I think that's manipulating the stats a little bit, though. Like, I'll grant you the Virginia Tech and the Miami, certainly they haven't panned out the way they wanted it to. But when you look at Nebraska was in the crapper before they moved to the Big Ten because they hired Bill Callahan. And then Bo Pelini was there, and he was winning 9 or 10 games the 4 years before they go to the Big Ten. And guess what? He won 9 or 10 games the 4 years after they went to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And then they got rid of him, and then they went right in the crapper.
Sure,
So
I'll give
I think
you
these
Nebraska,
are case by case. Yeah.
But
Colorado. Let me give you Colorado.
Okay.
Dan Hawkins kills their program, right? And then they go to the Pac-12, and their coaches are John Emery, Mike McIntyre, where they won 10 games once, and Carl friggin' Durrell. Is that because they switched conferences or because they're absolutely mismanaged?
Right.
This is exactly it. I think that you can doomsday project a little bit about teams that have moved to other conferences without understanding that the number one thing that gives you success at the college level is whether or not you hire the right coach.
Oh, like Kyle Lettingham.
And I would look,
and how you manage the program, of course.
And I would look at the programs that we're talking about who have made that shift.
And this is major conference to major conference. So we're not talking about Utah having success, TCU having success.
Look at them. I would love to do an analysis of the major conference to major conference movers, the coaches that they hired, and whether or not those coaches were failing at the schools because of where they were, or if they were just not, like, how many of those coaches you're listing off from Nebraska, Colorado, all these places went on to have success somewhere else.
Consistent.
Just let me give you a couple more data points here, right? Because like I said, I'm granting Virginia Tech and Miami, but how about Maryland, right? Everybody always points at them and say, oh, they're a freaking doormat. And Rutgers as well. Maryland was 45-60 has been 45-60 in the Big Ten. Well, guess what? The last 9 years before they went to the Big Ten, they were 52-60. Okay. Not a noticeable difference. They were crappy then. They're crappy now.
Right.
Rutgers won the Big East for the first time in the last Big East season. Okay. And then they went to the ACC before winning, they went to the AAC for 1 year before
in the mid-90s.
winning the lottery. Yeah. But they were a doormat for most of their history. Most of their history, they were a doormat, right? The last one I'll give you is Syracuse. 35-62 in 8 years before joining the ACC. They were 50-71 in the ACC, right? I mean, it's really about the same. It's like the same seasons. Crappy teams doing major conference switching, guess what? They're probably going to be crappy. Good teams, they're probably good.
Teams have gotten better. The only one I think you can make a maybe argument for is Pitt.
No, they're not getting. Yeah, Pitt would be a good example.
It's like just slightly. Louisville, like maybe you make that argument, but even then, I think they had a lot of success in the aughts.
No, but
in the Big East, like,
I don't know if we're arguing that they were supposed to get better, but maybe that's what Kensington's talking about. But I would also say that, well, they didn't get much worse either, right? They're just kind of the same. It really, but much Miami, like Alicia is saying, much more important is the coaching, how it's managed.
Yes,
and like you brought up, yes, they were not coming from a major conference, but what do Utah and TCU have in common? Consistency. I mean, now TCU has a new coach, but like throughout that whole transition process, there was a ton of consistency, and both teams were set up for pretty good success. Granted,
and good coaching hires.
Yeah.
Well, and plus, when you're moving up, like, they're all motivated to do better, right? They're motivated to go up there and kick butt, right?
Right. Yeah.
And TCU and Utah.
This thing is like greener pastures kind of thing, less so than moving up. Which is, I don't know. I agree. They're case by case. Each one kind of makes sense why they failed, but there should be an example of one that's obvious that get better.
Well, I think
also
Pitt's
think
the
it
one.
might be. I think it also is
It's
just
not overly obvious that they got better either.
Realistically, though, it's a very small sample size, and unfortunately, there aren't any examples that you can compare. I think to a Oklahoma, Texas, USC sort of.
No, it's
just
you can say
it
UCLA
feels
in
like
there.
it.
Throw UCLA in there.
It feels entirely new. What's happening right now feels entirely new to the to the realignment that has happened.
The
in
paradigm
the past.
shift is coming.
If it was Helton USC, it would be.
If it was Helton USC, this would be absolutely terrible.
Right. Yeah.
God, I miss Helton SC. That was a great SC.
We'll see what happens with that as well. We did get an email that I wanted to touch on from Andrew in Lisbon, which sort of touches on this. It says they're really just going to add Washington and Oregon to our Penn State, LSU, Michigan 2024 schedule, aren't they? Oh yeah, Wisconsin and Notre Dame. This is why I don't want them in the Big Ten. I'm all for tough schedules, but I don't know how I feel about that. Someone needs to look at that and figure out that it's not okay. Andrew in Lisbon. This is pointing at the argument of if it's too tough, somebody's got to lose, and you're not going to necessarily benefit from this. To the point about the schedules, they've got to completely scrap the thing that they put out a few months ago.
It's done.
Yeah, it's completely irrelevant.
That's
they
so
might,
funny.
They might want to use.
Hey, we got good content.
What lasted longer, that or Cliff Kingsbury's first stand?
Well, remember 2020 where
That's
they were
they
came out, schedules.
Oh yeah.
They were multiple schedules that they put out. But
big
but how do you feel about UW and Oregon maybe slotting into those schedules, Kenny?
I mean, we touched on this a little earlier, and I feel like, I like that we play great teams all the time. I thought in the Pac-12, we always had that issue, right? If we wouldn't make the playoff because of Larry's parity, I want parity in the conference.
Yeah.
Here's the secret thing about that. That makes for fun college football when there's parity in a conference. When Oregon can go to Stanford and they might lose that game. When Oregon State might upset whoever. Now imagine that those schools playing instead of Oregon State and Washington State are USC Penn State. USC Oregon is a great matchup.
Well, if we did not define how good a conference is by national championships and playoffs,
and how fun it is to watch,
then we would have raved about the Pac-12.
This is why everyone loves Pac-12 after dark.
Yes,
there's a reason that Pac-12 people don't like Pac-12 after dark because it's a late game and God forbid I'm up late.
Don't get me into that argument
on a Saturday night. Blah. But at the same time, just from a pure objective TV viewing experience,
it's fun.
It's great. There's a reason why people made it a thing.
There was
you just don't like when your team falls, at the hands of
our third string quarterback and your number 10 Utah.
The beauty of the Pac-12 after dark, which is truly a sad thing to lose, was that those games, I can't back this up with data, but I would wager that
there was magic to them.
The excitement, chaos, draw you in level of those games was so much greater than, as a counterbalance, the 9 a.m. Pacific, whatever Big Ten or just
a blowout. Ohio State blows out Indiana,
SEC games that were happening that were just okay, is I don't know. This isn't chaos. This isn't fun. This isn't.
Then I think of that UCLA Wazoo game.
Yeah,
the big comeback.
Absolutely wild.
Insanity. Yeah,
that was unbelievable.
I don't know that you ever replicated that with Northwestern and Purdue playing at
But now imagine, what I'm getting at is with that parity, imagine now that parity, but on this bigger scale.
Yes.
I think that makes for really fun football weekend and week out. And there will be years when SC will be 8-4. There will.
It's definitely the appeal of it, right? It's the appeal of that, you have all of these teams, all of these interesting,
That's why the TV network wants it.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I get the appeal.
Well, and I really think that, number one, I can't wait until we get enough former Pac-12 schools into the Big Ten so that we can just get our division that's named the Pac division.
Yeah.
We already know, they like to lean on history. So, they had legends and leaders or whatever. So now we're just gonna have the Pac division. And as soon as and hopefully it becomes not just Washington and Oregon, I really, as a father who's paying for Cal tuition, I really want Cal in, and I'd love to see Stanford in as well.
Stanford. Yeah.
Same.
But look, I really don't think that, however the schedule works out, adding Washington and Oregon, obviously two very good programs, right? But I don't think that they're going to stack the schedules of any team when they make these schedules up, any team so much that they're going to have the murderers row as much. So we're probably just going to replace a big matchup with an Oregon or Washington, and it's closer.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how all that kind of scheduling comes to be. I think we're going to see it.
Big complexities.
We're going to see it really soon. Probably early on in the off season when they have to get those schedules out. Want to give a big shout out to Alex in the chat who gave us a super chat. You are always super appreciated. We love you, Alex.
Absolutely. Alex is the dude. Number one Rotbot in history. Working just like climbing that ladder.
I didn't know where you're going to go on from the dude, but number one absolutely works for Alex here.
Well, Alex might also. I mean, Alex is a girl name too. Sorry.
Alex says, "Who is benefiting from Oregon and Washington's discount or bargain? Is it the TV networks or the Big Ten schools? In other words, we know how much the Big Ten is paying Oregon and Washington, but do we know how much the Big Ten is getting from the networks or for adding these two schools?" I don't know. Is there necessarily a number for that? Because I don't know, and just spitballing here, I don't know that the absolute total number of the TV deal changes, considering that there's only so many time slots, right? There's only like this might just create a situation like in the NFL where there's just more regional matchups where you might only see this game versus that game when you have more teams. So I don't know that it's going to completely change the amounts of money overall for everybody to split. I think the biggest thing here is that who benefits? I think it's SC and UCLA that benefits more than anything comparatively, right?
Yeah, I think for sure. And and you talk about them coming in, Washington, Oregon coming in with a little bit less. The one thing I thought was interesting is, everybody's talking about how the money's just going to keep going up, and keep going up, and keep going up. I heard our friends over at 12-Pack Radio, Rob, who does that statistical modeling. He's like talking about how he's actually he has like a media job, and he's like, well, as streaming we morph from cable into streaming, there's no guarantee that money's going to be there. And so for Washington, Oregon to come into the Big Ten, borrowing against what their future earnings are, assuming that the next paycheck's going to be even bigger, that's another thing I think out there is a little bit of drama sitting.
Yeah. That was the Pac-12 thing, right?
Yeah, right. I mean,
like the Pac-12 had the best deal in TV, for one season, and then it got completely won up by everybody else.
No, where this is. You guys know exactly where this is heading, and the comparison I'm going to make is a topical comparison in the NFL right now.
The running backs.
This is going to turn into the running backs. Everyone's just sort of running in the same direction, and the money's there, so you have to. But the reality is, eventually, a conference, whichever one the timing works out the least well, like is going to be the Josh Jacobs or the Dalvin Cook or the Jonathan Taylor, who's going to run up against that wall and be the one where they finally say, no, actually, we can't justify paying a running back this kind of money anymore. Well, that's
literally what happened to the Pac-12 this cycle, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's like, who's going to be next?
Yeah. So, but even more, it's
well, and it's funny too. Like, I know that there's been this growing kind of petty feud between Oregon and SC fans, right? And I think it's justified a little on both sides for various reasons. But when you look down the line, and I think, even if you're kind of shaking your head a little bit about Oregon being let in after us thinking that they weren't going to be let in, if they're having to leverage their future in the way that we just described, and you talk about, Phil Knight's only getting older, and how does it shake down after he's gone? There's a lot of things that do make the Oregon, like, they're in, seriously, we got to get stuff done right now, because who does know what the future holds.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just another thing I like about it, that this topic has been discussed to death, and I'm not worried about it for football, but the travel really is going to be crazy for these student athletes. I mean, I was friends with student athletes at SC. Mm-hmm. Their schedules were crazy as it was, and it's going to be crazier with all these new places we're having to travel to. It's nice that there's two other West Coast teams now.
Yes.
And the sooner they get more, the better, in my opinion.
I have to imagine that those end up being guaranteed games. Like,
and
they have to.
They have to be. I can't imagine.
And
there's a pod coming.
We got a question.
Pod pack.
We got a question on YouTube. Who asked this one? Somewhere. Touchdown USC. Will the additional UW and Oregon games cause more 7:30 p.m. Games for USC? Yes.
Yeah.
I think
were those ever going away?
I don't think they were.
I don't think they were,
because I think part of the reason for adding SC and UCLA was to add more time slots for the Big Ten, and
that's how you get more money from the broadcast partner.
Every other conference plays games at 7 p.m. local.
Yes.
Why would we? Why
wouldn't we play games at 7:30 p.m. when primetime games on the East Coast are 8 o'clock?
And people are saying, "Oh, well, the East Coast doesn't stay up for it. They'll stay up if it's Ohio State out here." Now, granted, that's not the game they're going to put at 7:30, but
I think 7:30 games are absolutely
Iowa
stay, and they will still be part of it. But on the travel thing, just as an aside, we don't have to talk about it, but number one, there will be a push to have more West Coast teams join these super conferences as soon as the logistics for the 4 teams that are in it right now become more revealed. Also, this is the number one sign for something that should have been happening before anyways. Football only conferences, basketball only conferences, including your non-revenue sports, or I'll call them like non-mainstream broadcast sports, in your conferences that are being driven by broadcast decisions, is absolute madness. Solve the problem by having separate conferences for your football and basketball.
And there's already a model for that too. Like
with the water polo and all of the other, there's
all the sports that the West Coast does that nobody else does.
Beach volleyball will have to probably do that.
It's not difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got a ton of questions on YouTube and Discord and email, so let's make sure that we open up the mailbag here.
You've got mail.
Be sure to pop in your questions here on YouTube, as long as you put the word question in the front. That helps us be able to sort them out as well. We got a couple of questions from our buddy Dan on Discord. The first one from Dan comes through, and he says, if the B2G, the too big 210, the 2IG, etc. happens, does the Rose Bowl want to be a CFP game, or does it want to be an East versus West championship? I know that this was bandied about. Could the Big Ten split into 2? If they added 2 more teams, you could literally have the Pac-10 and the Big Ten, and the East and the West, and they could meet at the Rose Bowl for a conference championship. Well, I think that would be great. I think that defeats the entire purpose of the Super Conference. Also, there's no way that the Rose Bowl would want to have its game in December. Like that's true. That would never happen. But I think it defeats the purpose of the conference as it is, because if you had it separated, if you had 2 divisions, you're essentially back to where you were. But
you own it all now.
You own it all right now. But then SC is only playing teams on the West Coast. You're not getting that SC Ohio State matchup in the middle of October.
Well, you just shave off one of the non-con games and turn it into a conference game that's like a crossover game.
I
imagine there's lots of ways to do that.
I did see a report about 10 conference games.
You could go 10
that's
conference
being considered.
Or you could just have, if you had 8 or 9 teams in your division, you only play 6 of them or something like that.
Yeah, there's ways to do it.
There's ways to do it, but I think it defeats the purpose also of the divisions. Like, getting rid of divisions is in vogue right now. I don't think you go back and just add divisions again.
That's true.
Because we've seen that the imbalance in divisions doesn't make sense for picking out the best team.
Unless you want to lean into a college football tradition and pay service to all of your fans, and you can do it anyway, and then you can create this matchup, whether it's at the Rose Bowl or wherever. But that would be the ultimate, like, look, we really do care, and they're going to make a crap ton of money off it anyway, right?
Counterpoint.
If they have all those teams.
If you're Michigan and Ohio State, do you want the conference championship to be in
battle? That's what I was going to say.
Not.
No, not.
Well, as I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the Rose Bowl. Although, like, maybe they rotate it, right? Maybe 1 year, because just real quick, I have a team that's in a league that's national, and it's really like by the shoestring budget or whatever. And even years we're on the East Coast, and odd years we're on the West Coast as far as the championship game goes. Maybe they come up with some sort of agreement like that.
Sure.
I could see that. I think realistically, though, the scheduling model that they came up with, the theory behind it, I think is very strong, and they should stay on that path. And the number one word I'd use to describe it is flex. The flex Pro, bit of it, whatever they called that, the protect plus flex, whatever. The number one bit about it, I think that they will look at and say we need to continue down this path is the flexibility to not be locked into matchups in particular places or anything like that. I think you're right.
Yeah,
you have a revolving a conference championship game that moves around. I think you have pods more than divisions, and or faux pods where you're protecting the rivalries, but then sort of cycling through in ways that you can sort of keep it competitive. You won't see a structure that resembles divisions, and I don't think you would see a structure that would call the Rose Bowl the conference championship game. There might be some sort of flexible option, though.
Yeah, when you say this, do you think that the way that Oregon and Washington got all this to go, do you think they're like, I need a dust filter for a Hoover Max extract pressure Pro Model 60? Can you help me with that?
Yes, I think. Well, actually, that was probably the Arizona's in Utah. That was them.
That was absolutely the call that Arizona.
That was them
making.
In the middle of New Mexico, getting over to the Big 12.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a second email from our Discord message from Dan. Dan is a member of the Route Squad. You can join us over on Discord for $4.99 a month. You get to join our Discord and get all of our bonus episodes on YouTube as well. So join us on YouTube and become a member that way. Dan's next question. Has there been any reporting that I haven't seen on if universities changing conferences have any discussions on operations and logistics? Well, I'm sure that they can figure it out. I'm imagining the AD calling an all-hands meeting and telling everyone they're moving conferences and have to figure out the details later. I think Dan nailed it.
Yep.
Pretty much. Well, I think that USC and UCLA probably had
I think so
more
too.
of these discussions. For the rest of them, no.
Oregon also had a big deck.
Oregon and Washington made that decision within a 12-hour span.
I really think Oregon and Washington, I don't think this deal was on the table like the week before.
Yeah, even days before. Yeah.
I Alicia, you and I have gone into big life decisions where like, we are not going to get the first dog we see at the pound. We need to see multiple dogs and blah, blah, blah. And then you see the first dog and then Jesse and you're like,
and then Jesse licked my hand and I was like, we're taking her home though, right?
Yes. And that's Oregon and Washington was like, yes, we're joining the Big Ten.
Well, they saw a different dog at the pound and it was Cujo on an Apple deal. And they're like, oh, never mind. We got to get out of here.
That literally happened to us though. Sorry, Charlie. Not Charlie. What was his name?
Wilson.
Sorry, Wilson.
Yeah. Sorry. Let's go to questions that we've gotten here over on YouTube. We've got a bunch of those. If you want to add a question, you can throw them in there. Renee says, do we know if Bear Alexander is practicing?
I did see a tweet that showed from the period. It was from Ryan Young, and it was the period that the media is allowed to film and allowed to see of practice. And he was out there sort of doing the warm-ups and stuff like that. I don't know if that means that he's a full participant in practice, but he is on the field doing warm-ups and stuff like that. So
take that for
that's a decent, that's an okay sign. I'll take that.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Bear Alexander next Wednesday as we look at the defense. Cameron from Frisco, Texas, famously of this.
I blame Larry Scott for this.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Cameron says, is Alicia optimistic or pessimistic with the additions of Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten?
I am optimistic. I actually think this is a case of optimistic, Alicia.
It didn't sound optimistic.
I'm so torn on this because, like, on the one hand, and it's funny because, like, I tweeted out when it seemed like the Pac-12 on Friday when it looked like the Pac-12 was going to survive.
Yeah.
I tweeted out that like this might.
I actually was happy about
this.
It.
Might be good news for USC because the advantage that USC was going to have over everybody else in the West Coast recruiting scene was going to be pretty big, and like the competitive advantage was going to be kind of nice to see.
Let's be honest, Oregon has been recruiting USC for a while.
Yeah, Oregon has given USC fits on the recruiting trail. So like that was a thing. But then the sentimental part of me was like when they got moved, it was like, good. It's not just USC and UCLA. It's not just the LA schools sort of on their own island in the Big Ten doing this alone. I love the idea of having that pod of 4. I love the idea even more of having the traditional California rivals get brought in and having that pod of 6 and in that way, like as much as I've been saying like that people are overblowing the loss of tradition and the death of the sport and blah blah blah, all of that, like I'm not going to watch college football anymore because of all this. It's like that's bullshit. But as much as I sort of push back on all of that, I am not completely without sentiment. I am not completely.
Oh yeah.
I liked the Pac-12. Like I liked the rivals that USC had. I liked the landscape that USC was in. I liked at Pac-12 After Dark and all of that kind of stuff.
You're afraid of Corvallis. Like it's all these things.
Yeah, all of
built
these
up
things.
Over years,
so retaining some of those by having at least Washington and Oregon along for the ride is it's making me optimistic. It's making me say like it's not all about competitive advantage and all of that kind of stuff. The sentimentality is there too.
Yeah, Randy says on YouTube, what does this do to the Rose Bowl? Jake, what does it do to the Rose Bowl?
Well, I just think it's kind of it's accelerating the path with which the Rose Bowl is going to have to just end up as a ceremonial something or other inside the playoff landscape, which is already where it was quickly heading. But now there's nobody to stick up for it. There's no Pac-12 to really dig in and say, oh no, we have to do it on this day and it has to be in this time window or whatever. There's still going to be a little bit of juice for it, but I think it'll just fit in with the other bowls in the playoff. And that is definitely something that's lost. But I mean, I don't think it was going to go any other way.
Yeah. The last Big Ten Pac-12 Rose Bowl was played last season. It was Utah Penn State.
And you know what? That's perfectly fine. One of the best Rose Bowl, two of the best Rose Bowl games of the last century or the last few decades, USC versus Texas and Georgia versus Oklahoma. It's going to be fine, guys.
The Rose Bowl will still have the magic it has. But also, before any of this realignment, this was the playoff that changed it.
You know what I would love? An early Rose Bowl.
Like how early?
Like, okay, so in the NFL, they put the champion opens the season on a Thursday night.
Oh, you mean okay?
You mean a different day?
Wow.
Yeah, no. Why doesn't the Big Ten put the champion or whoever was like the best team in the Big Ten, whatever, the champion opens the season?
Wowza.
Either on a Thursday night or on the
because
week
it's
0.
115 degrees.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe Thursday night would be better. Week 0 primetime game in the evening at the Rose Bowl, and it's last year's Big Ten champion against the runner-up or against the conference champion
or media poll or whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is, like some big opponent.
Yeah.
And it could just be a game that's already on their schedule and it just flexed up to week 0. I think that would be fun.
It'd be fun. I mean, the Rose Bowl is genuinely one of the things I will miss the most, just of tradition. I mean, even growing up, that was always like,
right.
I feel like I'll miss that more than like going to Pullman or whatever. But that was going to happen with the playoff anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're going to have to figure out what to do with the automatic playoff stuff. Like,
yeah. Oh, that's got to go out the window, I would imagine.
Those things are going to have to be reshaped.
Hold up. I have breaking news. I have breaking news.
Play it, Michael.
I don't think we have that. Okay. This account on Twitter, the account on Twitter.
Is this some sort of
the one who's right about everything?
The one that's right, and if we mean by right, engagement bait on Twitter, might have actually produced something awesome. They are right for once.
What?
The best college football podcast for every school.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh, it's
USC?
that account. Okay.
Reign of Troy.
Wow. Look at you.
Wait.
We are Big Game Boomer approved.
Okay, I thought
that guy's the biggest baiter mother ever. Oh my God.
I thought you were going to talk about one of the conference realignment people.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No,
this is more important.
We are Big Game Boomer approved. That's all I'm going to say. They may not have things right about the best Mexican food in any place or anything.
What fans don't care yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations, everybody.
They nailed this one.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'll stop clipping the the board. Tim in LA says, once the dust settles with realignment, could you do sort of a how we got here breakdown of everything that got us from the 2011 expansion to the 2023 collapse? I would love to do that, but that sounds terrifying. Putting together like that's not one podcast. That's like a whole summer's worth of podcasts. Like
a lot to happen.
That's a whole docuseries.
I mean, you could get into even things like USC not being as good is a big factor in it. Like,
I think,
great, yeah.
We were having a conversation with some friends this morning, even talking about how if USC gets the post-Sark hire right, the Pac-12 probably exists right now in its full form. Like, it might even be the Pac-16. Like, they might be the one poaching from the Big 12.
They still probably should have. They could have done that probably a year ago, which is the crazy thing.
Yeah.
You know what's wild? And I was thinking about it, and I had said at the time in that conversation, like, the timing's really tricky though, because you know you weren't going to get a Lincoln Riley. Like, who were you going to end up with? Justin Fuente? But then I thought about it. Why couldn't you have gotten a Lincoln Riley? Like, realistically, you could have picked up Lincoln.
Always could have.
You could have gotten Lincoln Riley while he was the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma and done that promotion. You could have undercut Oklahoma before they were able to get to that point of giving him the keys to the car. Like, that actually was somewhat not unrealistic.
This will come off homery. I think USC could have hired whoever they wanted to hire and they hired Lincoln Riley.
If they went out and acted like they did when they hired Lincoln Riley, they could have done that, but they also didn't have the personnel that was going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a question from Randy that says, what will the effect be on non-revenue sports? Non-revenue sports, it'll be tough. This sucks, but non-revenue sports are very much a figure it out later kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the unfortunate reality of it. And that includes, all the women's sports, that includes men's sports like tennis, and they got, who knows what's going to happen with them, right? Like those sports.
If I'm going to give even
basketball, which is a revenue sport, like
is different,
sitting in the back seat here.
Yeah. The most sort of let's spin it sort of answer to this is the more money thing helps those sports to a point as well. Like, more money in your athletic department.
Tell us more about trickle-down economics.
I'm just but exactly, yeah.
No, that's
the spin. That's the only spin I could give.
Right.
I
agree.
The only positive there.
But this still sucks.
Yes.
It
which
sucks
is why they should do non-football conferences.
They should, the football conferences should be independent of everything else. Like, I think that, especially when you look at, not everybody plays the same sports that you play. Like,
even baseball, Colorado didn't play baseball.
You look at water polo, the teams that are rivals for SC, yes, UCLA, Stanford, Cal are the big ones, right? But the other teams they play is like Santa Clara and like Irvine,
Long Beach, I think, right?
Cal Poly, like those are the teams that are in your conference in the MPSF. Like, I think that has got to stay the same.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with beach volleyball, which is dominated by our two schools.
Yeah.
We're like the only ones who win it.
Yeah. To me, I just think that they already have, like I said, they already are doing this to a degree with other sports. Right. So you would think they're going to veer that way just because that's the simplest way to do it.
The interesting one, I think, is if Cal and Stanford go to the ACC, I think the ACC kind of works for them sports-wise, because Cal plays a bunch of East Coast sports, like field hockey.
And
like nobody plays field hockey out in the West. It's very much like a Maryland thing.
Well, that's the joke always about like why Stanford is like the number one athletic department. It's like, because they play a sport no one plays. And they're like, we're the national champions.
Right. And then you see those lists of like non-NCAA national champs, and it's like Idaho is like the best at like, potato smelling or whatever it is.
Yeah, they are good at
that. Leonard says, how will the Pac-12 self-destruction affect Roy Hibbert's legacy?
You got the crickets. I don't understand the joke other than, I don't know. It's an Indiana thing, which is a Big Ten school. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm
sorry about that one.
Sure.
Loss.
Sorry.
If that was Big Game Boomer, you're losing that.
It's either a Big Ten reference or a Parks and Rec reference. Either way, I'm missing it.
Touchdown USC also says, will the ASU versus West Virginia game be pay-per-view? Maybe. You never know what's going to happen with the TV deal.
They still do one of those a year.
The funny thing is, SC fans love to talk about how bad the Pac-12 network is.
And it is.
It
is bad.
It's so bad.
Yes, it's bad.
So bad.
In the Big 12, as it stands today, obviously this will change, but teams hold their own rights for third-tier games, which means that Oklahoma every year has sold their third-tier rights to pay-per-view. So every year they play a pay-per-view game.
Not Fox Sports, Stillwater.
And so they played, I think it was Army.
And they almost
lost.
It was
Army. On pay-per-view.
And I can tell you, as somebody whose livelihood is partially based on being able to generate traffic by producing content about college football, I know for a fact it was the Army game that was pay-per-view because I wrote the
and like
How
bucks,
to Watch Oklahoma versus Army article, and my God, did that thing do traffic?
Well, awesome. like, can you imagine paying $60 pay-per-view for the San Jose State game?
That's why I'm saying that the Pac-12,
you might as well.
If the Apple deal for Pac-12 was something in the area of $75 a year, that would have been absolutely doable.
I think it's good that Oklahoma gets like an additional $8 million from pay-per-view.
Yeah, they were really hurting before that.
But like the fan experience sucks, and the fan experience for all this stuff basically sucks. So, all right, we're gonna finish this up with a email that we got from Tony, which Jake I know will love here. It says Tony begins all of his emails by saying that this is Tony from Denora, PA, which I love. That plate from last week was a horrible plate for a cookout.
Dreadful.
It should have contained ribs, hamburgers, mac and cheese, and some baked beans. And if you're watching here on YouTube, we've put the picture back up of the infamous photo from Michigan last week. Jake, I know you had thoughts on this photo.
In fact, I sent you my thoughts on the photo, right? This is, we know we looked at this thing. We knew it was like perfect for you. And Alicia sent it to me before she started tweeting it. But my thought on this. I
said this to everyone in my life.
If I were running a summer camp for 10 and under, like this would be awesome, right? But for anything other than that, or I'm sorry, 10 and under or Michael, this would be awesome.
I mean,
but other than that, it's ridiculous.
It was a youth camp. These are high school recruits.
USC's taken their recruits to like Nobu. And Michigan is giving.
That's a great. I know. That's a. Oh man,
it's literally.
But there's got to be the recruit like Michael who is having a miserable time at Nobu, who is like, there's nothing on this menu.
They had that plate.
They might have katsu, maybe.
Yeah.
No, Michael. This is just. I mean, it's very funny, and I think the fact that Michigan got made fun of a little bit for it is absolutely appropriate. But the fact that it fits right into your food taste, just says it all, right? And I know that the word elite came out of your Twitter fingers when it's just ridiculous.
Elite, you don't really think that's an elite
oh, he does.
Meal.
that's the problem. He does think
those chicken tenders look good,
and that is a
those
damn
look like
shame.
Tenders.
It's a damn shame.
I
think the mac and cheese is probably the best thing on that plate.
No, I'll bet you that's not even.
The cookie is.
I'll bet you that's not even an all beef hot
plate,
dog,
though,
which is ridiculous.
The bun, the
bun is terrible.
Unwarmed bun. I need a warmed.
Now look, I'll agree. Like, I'm not above it. Like you were saying on that last podcast, a plate of chicken tenders is great.
Yeah,
I'm not going to pretend like I'm too high.
You're too uppity if you don't want a plate of chicken tenders. Yeah,
but those ones don't look good. That plate is plated poorly, and it doesn't look good.
So I will say that Alicia and I participated over the weekend in a chicken tender or fried chicken taste test.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I got to pull up the photo. I don't have it for on.
Did you go to Chick-fil-A?
No.
No. So my brother organized this.
Nice.
It was a root beer tasting, fried chicken tasting, and wine tasting all in one. It was a very interesting experience.
What root beer one?
We all agreed that Barks is goated. The
only one with caffeine, by the way.
Yep.
Does that have caffeine?
Yeah.
It's the only one with caffeine. how high end did you get on the root beers? How crazy did you get?
He at Bevmo has like a variety pack of like.
We did a root beer tasting over the summer as well.
And so he got that, and we all agreed that Barks is goated, and then the one that I really liked was I'm pulling it up right now.
Is it Frosty?
Was it
Virgil's is the one that nobody liked.
Yeah, nobody liked Virgil's, which we were all a little bit surprised of. And then Americana, I thought was outstanding.
Henry Weinhard's won our competition for the high end.
Henry Weinhard's
and A&W was our favorite on the low end, and then the dissenting opinion from my daughter Molly was Barks.
Barks is great.
Yeah, I didn't like Henry Weinhard's, but
out of the bottle especially.
Sorry for the chicken, the fried chicken tasting.
Mm-hmm.
The
highest one is Howlin' Ray's.
The ones that were gotten were Popeyes, Humble Bird, KFC, Chemelier, Howlin' Ray's, and Bruxy.
Was Popeyes high on that list?
Popeyes.
I gave a 4.8 to Popeyes out of 7.
I gave Popeyes a solid 4, right in the middle. Everything was out of 7.
But I love
it.
Popeyes.
Was a whole thing.
I love Popeyes. Yeah,
4.8 out of 7 is still good.
Yeah. The number 1 for me was Howlin' Ray's and
that makes sense.
Chemelier. Howlin' Ray's was really good.
Also, just talking chicken tenders. If any of our people are going out to the ASU game,
you
gotta go to Four Peaks.
Go to Four Peaks.
Four Peaks has the best chicken tenders.
There's a glass on the table, literally.
Yeah, we've got the kilt lifter on there.
Yeah.
So that was fun. We do those tastings every once in a while, and we should do more of them.
And you finally did a tasting that Michael can participate in. How nice.
We did.
I mean, I didn't participate in the champagne.
He didn't do the wine.
But you did the chicken and the root beer, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, all right, we've gone long. This has been fun. We were going to talk about preseason stuff.
I want to talk about Dante Moore. Why can't I talk about Dante Moore?
I know we ran out of time.
I want to talk about Kyle Ford.
Yeah.
Why can't I talk about Kyle Ford?
Oh,
nobody wants to talk about Kyle.
Son of a gun.
I
do.
Big shout out to everyone.
Big fella.
We baited him to come by making.
Yeah, this is where they dangle in front of me and then they shut me off.
Pulled the rug out from under him.
I've never had such poor.
It was all part of our plan.
Sorry, I'll play this for you.
Growing revolution is in full effect.
Yeah, whatever. Get out of that.
The growing revolution is in
still
full
going.
effect.
It's still going. Just slow burn.
They're in a new conference.
Slow burn.
Yeah. You don't win a revolution.
Revolution.
Hey, those were good years for us. So
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back next Monday with the USC preview, talking on offense. Big shout out to everyone who joined us on YouTube. Big apologies, by the way. I screwed up the streams.
Michael.
So the link that we shared wasn't the link that ended up going live. So we screwed that up. I'm sorry. Shame. I hope everyone figured that out. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And we love you too. And we tell you to go leave us a review. As always on Apple Podcasts. It helps grow the show. We got a review last week, but no one wrote anything. But if you write something, we'll read it.
Mm-hmm.
But any review helps grow the show. If you listen to us on Spotify, subscribe there as well. All those things. And subscribe to us as members on YouTube. The Rot Squad. That would be helpful for bonus content as we go forward. And you get to join the Discord. You can talk to us all the time as you want. So that's gonna wrap up the show. As always, thanks Kenny, thanks Jake for joining. Any final words, Kenny?
This season is so close. It's like this is the longest part of the off season because each day feels so long, but it won't be that long before we're out there at the Coliseum again.
We're almost
cannot
there.
wait.
I'm just if we make it to the season and Dante Moore is still a Bruin, I'll be very happy. That was a rumor, ugly rumor, no truth to it.
Yeah.
No, I'm very excited. And
he did say it was
all I know is that he, in the next breath after the controversy, he's like, oh yeah, well, I went to Malibu and went to Nobu and yada yada yada. So if he's doing that, I don't think he's too worried about money. So we'll
Martin Jarman made a call.
Yeah. What kind of? He's made a lot of calls recently.
Future USC
another touchy subject. You guys asked for it, and apparently it's
hold on,
in the works.
Hold on. I think Sam Gilbert, the ghost of Sam.
Okay,
Gilbert.
I'll come over this table.
All right.
Castillo, button it up.
Oh, we got to end this thing because the puppy Jessie is very hungry. She's like tapping around, putting her chin on laps.
You guys should see her.
She's been playing this whole time.
She's laying on the ground with her, I call them roadkill toys, and just like mad that no one is playing with her.
So sad.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll be back next week with video, we promise. Until then, See ya. Thanks for everybody for joining us. And as always, see ya.
See ya.